Good day, sports fans, and welcome to Cricket South Africa's Level 3 umpiring course, proudly brought to you by Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. My name is Tom Mokorosi, and as usual, my co-presenter for the course is Abdullah Steenkamp. We are proudly presenting to you live today from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. We are currently busy with a level 1, level 2, and level 3 face-to-face training courses with Tanzania Cricket Association umpires who are pictured in the screen at the moment. We would like to take this opportunity to thank Tanzania Cricket Association for the invitation, and we are thoroughly enjoying our time here in Dar es Salaam. The weather is warm and balmy, and the people are very friendly and welcoming. As you can see, I'm donning a Tanzania cricket shirt, and we thank the officials again for their hospitality as well as their generosity in all they have given to us while we are here. We will be leaving on Thursday, but before we do that, there is the small matter of the online level 3 umpiring course to be presented to all of you around the world. Thank you so much for joining us. We know it has been a long, outstanding course, having been postponed from September. So I hope you're all ready to learn and will be ready for the exam in January. So let's have a look at the course timetable. Today is Monday, the 16th of December, and we will be obviously doing an introduction as well as going through some logistics of the course. And we will only be presenting 2 laws to you this evening. So the way that the Cricket South Africa Level 3 exam works is that not all 42 laws of cricket are examined. So we only go through the parts of the laws that are examined in Cricket South Africa's Level 3 exam. So today we'll touch on laws number 2 and law 11. Tomorrow we will touch on laws 12, 14, 18, and 19. Next week, Monday, we will go through the parts of the laws 20, 21, 23, and 24 that are examined in the Cricket South Africa Level 3 exam. On Tuesday, the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, we are such committed umpires that we will be training on Christmas Eve. We will go through laws 28, 33, 35, 37, 38, and 39. And then on Monday, the 30th of December, we will spend the entire lecture focusing on law 41. Very importantly, on Monday, the 31st of December, New Year's Eve, once again showing our commitment to the laws and to the training of umpires across the world. And we thank you as well for joining us at these odd times. We will be having a revision lecture where we will be going through some revision questions to prepare you for the exam. And of course, I'm sure a few of you know that our exam will be online, and it is a new website that we are using. The company is called Exam Online, and the website address is in the 2 rows below the timetable. And we will be doing a demonstration on Monday, the 31st of December, how all of you will be writing the exam online. I'll briefly explain it on the next slide, but it should be a lot easier for all of us concerned than our previous online exam options. So as usual, there are two dates that you can write the exam. Saturday, the 4th of January, South African time, 9 a.m. until midday. It's a 3-hour exam. The other option is Monday, the 6th of January, 2025, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. All exams that we will be hosting as Western Province Cricket Umpires Association on those two option dates will be online. Unfortunately, for those of you in Cape Town who would prefer to write in the traditional manner in a classroom, Newlands Cricket Ground will not be available. There will be the New Year's Test match on at the time, starting from Friday the 3rd of January, ending on Tuesday the 7th of January. So the dates of our exams are completely overlapping the test match at Newlands. So for this exam period only, we will not be having face-to-face exam options in Cape Town. For those of you who are members of umpires associations around the country in South Africa, you preferably should write the level 3 exam at your home association. So you are welcome to enjoy the lectures and learn from us for the next couple of weeks. However, when it comes to the writing of your exam, Cricket South Africa prefers that members of umpires associations across the country write in their own home association, invigilated by their head of training or training coordinator. If, however, your association allows you to write the exam with us, Western Province Cricket Umpires Association, we will need that letter of permission emailed to training@wpcua.co.za before the exam date of Saturday, the 4th of January. And that letter needs to come from any executive committee member of your umpires association. Without that letter, we will not allow members of other umpires associations to write the exam online with WPCUA. Please, that is a clear instruction from Cricket South Africa that we cannot ignore, and you as members of other associations also shouldn't ignore. A little bit more about the exam. The exam is 120 marks. It is a 3-hour paper. The pass mark is 80%. And depending on how many of you end up writing with us, we estimate we'll take about a maximum of 3 weeks to mark the exam papers. So you should have your results on Monday, the 27th of January by the latest. As mentioned, the pass mark is 80%. Those candidates who achieve between 75 and 79% will not have to rewrite the entire exam. They will be emailed the questions that they did poorly on. They will be asked to resubmit answers on email, and pending the successful answering of those correction questions, they will then hopefully pass their exam. Candidates who achieve a score of between 65 and 74% will be allowed a free rewrite of the full exam in probably April 2025. Sorry, it should be March 2025, when we will be writing level 2 exams. So you can do your level 3 rewrite when other candidates are writing their level 2 exams. We will obviously keep you updated with the timings of those rewrites closer to when they are planned. Candidates who achieve less than 65% will have to redo the course, and our next level 3 online course should be in May 2025. The lectures are free, but an exam fee applies for all of you who wish to write with us. It is 400 rands for candidates inside South Africa, and the payment details have been emailed to you last week, Tuesday, when I sent the course material and logistics email. When I sent the reminder email for this evening's lecture, I did also, at the bottom half of that email was last week, Tuesday's email with all the course logistics and material. So just read through that email thoroughly. You'll be able to know where to pay, how much to pay, and when is the deadline for payments for the exam. For foreign candidates, the fee is $40, and we prefer that payment is made via PayPal. And if you don't have PayPal, and if you don't know anybody who does have PayPal who could pay for you and then you refund them, you can either text me. I'll put my WhatsApp number in the chat box later, or you can email training@wpcua.co.za, and I will give you details of a bank account that receives international transfers that you can make payment into. So just a little bit more about the logistics behind the exam. As mentioned, the new online exam website provides a proctor. Myself and Abdullah will be proctoring the exams. What proctoring means is that we will be able to see all of the individual exam writers, and each one of you will have to register, and part of the registration process is providing an identity document that you take a picture of before the exam, and you also take a picture of yourself using your webcam. And when you come into the proctor room, you will show your picture and we will match your identity to who we see on the screen. And then we will ask you to move your computer around the room to show us that there is no study material that you could possibly use in the room, because it is a closed book exam. And we will also need to confirm that there is nobody else in the room to help you with the exam. So a lot more secure process than in previous years. And a lot of you in previous years have asked us if you can type in your answers instead of write your answers. So this new website allows only for answers to be typed into text boxes. There will be no more writing of answers for our online exams. At the bottom, I've highlighted in yellow what I mentioned earlier. Members of other umpires associations in South Africa, if they want to write with WPCUA either on the 4th of January or the 6th of January, they need to provide written permission from an executive member of their umpires association. Otherwise, they need to find a date and time and venue to write at their home association with the head of training or the training coordinator invigilating that exam. So that is all the logistics I have for you at the moment. You are welcome to type in any questions into the chat box, because maybe you don't understand the process, or you want clarity on one or 2 points, or you joined the lecture a little bit late, so some of the information you wouldn't have heard. Feel free, as and when we present, to add any questions into the chat box for us to answer in our question and answer session at the end of the lecture. So just to ensure that everybody does have access to the chat box, let's have a look, see, and introduce each other to everyone. I would like to know where everybody is tuning in from today. So I will type into the chat box that I am currently in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And Abdullah will also type in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. I see Arslan Premji, who's been one of the generous hosts here in Dar es Salaam for us. He will also type in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. So please go ahead and type into the chat box which town and which country you are in, just to get a feel of the international flavor that we have assembled for this course. Right. Moving swiftly along, I will only be presenting one law this evening, and then I'll hand over to Abdullah to also present one law. So the law that I am presenting this evening is law number 2, the umpires. And as mentioned, we are not presenting the entire law of every law that we're presenting. We are only presenting the parts of the law that are examined in Cricket South Africa's Level 3 exam. So which part of Law 2 is examined in Cricket South Africa's Level 2 exam? It is the position of umpires that we need to learn about for the exam. Law tells us that the umpire shall stand where he or she can best see any act upon which his or her decision may be required. Subject to this overriding consideration, the bowler's end umpire shall stand in a position so as not to interfere with either the bowler's run-up or the striker's view. Now, you might be surprised that nowhere in the law does it state that the bowler's end umpire needs to stand directly behind the middle stump at the bowler's end. But of course, to be able to judge decisions like leg before wicket to the best of our ability, we need to be in line with the middle stump, directly behind the bowler's end stumps. So make sure before you start a match, you line yourself up, ask your partner to be at the other side and take a bail, put it behind the stumps, and your partner should not be able to see that bail because it is directly behind the middle stump. If he or she can see it, then they will ask you to move that bail to the left or to the right. And once you have got your mark behind the middle stump at the bowler's end, then you can mark it, and that's where you will stand. It is quite common for us umpires to make more than one mark so that we can move back or forward as and when necessary. And in the next slide, we will talk about when it could be necessary to move backwards or forwards to accommodate a bowler's request. We've spoken about the bowler's end umpire. What about the striker's end umpire? Law tells us that the striker's end umpire may elect to stand on the offside of the batter instead of the onside of the pitch, provided that he or she informs three people. First person that the umpire needs to inform when they're moving from the leg side to the offside is the fielding captain. Then also inform the striker and, of course, inform your partner before you move over to the position at point. So we're going to watch a video, and you can see the start of this video. Tino Best, former West Indian fast bowler, is in his bowling action about 1.5 meters behind the umpire, Gregory Braithwaite, also from the West Indies. This was a Caribbean Premier League match back in 2018 or 2019. And back then, there was no ruling about how far back the bowler can bowl from. So it's obviously a tactic that some bowlers use to bowl from far behind the bowling crease at the bowler's end. And you will see when I play the video that the umpire let play continue. No issue identified. But after this incident, the International Cricket Council decided to put in a blanket rule for a bowler bowling from behind the bowler's end umpire. So let's have a look at the video, and then we will talk through the process that the umpires need to follow if a bowler bowls from behind the bowler's end umpire.
He has bowled that from so far behind the umpire. That is the furthest I've ever seen a delivery served up from.
So you can see in that final frame that Tino Best ended up delivering the ball about 1 meter, between 1 meter and 1.5 meters from behind Gregory Braithwaite, the bowler's end umpire. And as mentioned, no action was taken because there was no ruling against a bowler bowling from behind the bowler's end umpire. But of course, a bowler bowling from behind the bowler's end umpire presents a couple of challenges for the bowler's end umpire. The bowler's end umpire is not able to ascertain where the back foot of the bowler landed. We all know from level 1 that if a bowler's foot lands on or outside of the return crease, and that is his or her back leg, back foot, then we need to call and signal no ball. If a bowler bowls from behind the bowler's end umpire, the bowler's end umpire cannot ascertain where in relation to the return crease the back foot landed. If we cannot see an infringement, we cannot call and signal no ball. So the International Cricket Council decided that the treatment for a bowler bowling from behind the bowler's end umpire is call and signal dead ball. The ball needs to be rebowled, and any runs that were scored off that delivery will not count. The ball will be cancelled. A batter cannot be dismissed, and in fact, best practice here is for the umpire, as soon as he or she sees the ball flying past him or her in his or her peripheral vision, to call and signal dead ball, so that the batter, even if he or she does hit the ball, knows that the the ball is now dead and nothing will come of that delivery. I mentioned earlier that when we set up in the morning in terms of lining ourselves up behind the middle stump, we usually make 2, some umpires make 3 marks so that we can move back and forward to accommodate a bowler's need. Most of us like to stand a little bit closer to the stumps when spin bowlers are operating, and we stand a little bit further back when fast bowlers are in operation, just to give us more time. So where do we normally stand? How I do it is when I am standing, I want to see the bails in line with the protected area markings, which are 1.52 meters or 5 feet in front of the popping crease. So that is where I stand for the spinners. And then for the fast bowlers, I take 2 steps back or 2 feet back. And that's where I make my mark for the fast bowlers. You need to determine what distance from the stumps is most comfortable for you, and you can move back and forth within reason to accommodate a bowler's request. However, if Gregory Braithwaite had to move 2 meters back for him to be able to see where Tino best delivered the ball from, he would be way too far from the action at the striker's end and risks missing hearing a caught behind. So, yes, try as far as possible to work with the bowler, but do not compromise your ability to make the best decisions because you're now too far or too close to the stumps. Lastly, if the bowler continues to bowl from behind the bowler's end umpire, the umpire needs to warn the bowler for time wasting and inform the captain of the fielding side that it is a team warning. And we will learn later in level 3 that if a team, after they have received a first and final warning for time wasting, if they continue to waste time, the bowler's end umpire will award 5 penalty runs to the batting side. So that should be deterrent enough to stop the bowler from bowling from behind you. That is my bit for this evening for now. I'm now going to hand over to Abdullah to take us through Law 11, which is the intervals. And he's got a fair few calculations and slides for us to go through. Over to you, Abdullah.
Thank you so much, Tom. Good evening to you and good evening to the rest of the attendees. And once again, I want to thank Tanzanian Cricket Association for hosting us. They've been amazing hosts and we've enjoyed our time so far here. We're going back to South Africa on Thursday, but I'm enjoying my time so much here. I think, Tom, you're going back on your own. So I'm covering this evening law number 11, which are the intervals, and I'm going to focus on scheduled intervals, and in particular, how we can adjust these intervals or how we can change these scheduled intervals to maximize play throughout the day. The law allows for flexibility. The law allows us to move our intervals forward or at times maybe a bit back so that we can maximize play during the day. So let's have a look at the flexibility that the law gives us when it comes to our scheduled intervals. But before we get to the flexibility, let's first again go through what are these scheduled intervals. Firstly, The period of close of play on day one and the start of the next day's play, that is seen as a scheduled interval. Throughout my examples, I will use test match cricket playing times as an example. In South Africa, the test match playing times are 10 o'clock start, and there are 3 2-hour sessions, and then close of play is on 5 o'clock. So on day one, the game will start at 10 o'clock, close of play will be at 5 o'clock. Day two will start at 10 o'clock again. So the first scheduled interval is that period from close of play on day one, which is 5 o'clock, until the start of day two, which is 10 o'clock. That is seen as a scheduled interval in test match cricket or in cricket. Same applies on day 2, day 3, day 4, and day 5. Your interval between innings, also seen as a scheduled interval. Your interval for meals, those are your lunch and your tea interval, also scheduled intervals. Interval for drinks, also an example of a scheduled interval, and any other agreed interval. What we are going to focus on in tonight's lecture is the flexibility that the law allows for the interval between innings, interval for meals, and interval for drinks. Also, the governing body of cricket, and for test match cricket, it's the International Cricket Council, they determine the length of these intervals, especially intervals for meals and interval for drinks. So for test match cricket, the ICC decided that your interval for meals will be 40 minutes for lunch and 20 minutes for tea. Interval for drinks in test match cricket is 4 minutes. It might slightly differ in other competitions across the world, but I think for most competitions, most more-day competitions, these times are almost exactly the same. Like in the Cricket South Africa provincial competition, they play more-day cricket over 4 days. There, the interval for meals, for lunch is also 40, tea 20 minutes, and drinks is 4 minutes. So now we know the governing body decide on these timings. But what the law do guide us is when it comes to the duration of these intervals. Yes, the ICC tells us how long it should be, but all the guidance that the law gives us is whatever duration that was decided for test match cricket, which is the ICC, they decided that, let's use lunch as an example, but the same principle wouldn't apply to tea. They decided lunch to be 40 minutes. So the law guide us and tell us that 40 minutes duration that was decided by the governing body, that needs to start from the call of time before the interval and until the call of play on the resumption after the interval. I'll use an example to illustrate how this works. So we know our lunch is 40 minutes. So lunch is scheduled from 12 until 12:40. Again, I'm just using test match cricket as an example. It's easy for all of us. So we all watch test matches on TV. So in South Africa, the playing times are 10 o'clock till 12 o'clock. That's our first session, 2 hours. We'll have a drinks break at 11 o'clock till 11:04. We'll have lunch from 12 till 12:40. The second session will again be 2 hours, 12:40 till 14:40. We'll have a 20 minutes tea interval. There'll also be a drinks break in the middle of the second session. And the third session will be from 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock, also with a drinks break in the middle of that session. So our lunch, let's use day one as an example, scheduled to be taken from 12 until 12:40. So the sixth legal delivery in the over is bowled at exactly 12 o'clock, and the bowlers in umpire calls over, time, and lunch. So now it's exactly 12. Everyone goes off. Time was called at exactly 12 o'clock. So after lunch, when must the first ball be bowled? No, this is where the law guides us. You took lunch at 12 o'clock, And your interval now needs to be that agreed duration. You call time at 12 o'clock. So from that moment that you call 12, that is where your 40 minutes starts. So the first ball after lunch to be bowled exactly 40 minutes, which in this example is 12:40. Just practically what happens to make sure that the first ball gets bowled at 12:40, the umpires will take the field at 12:35. And then after the umpires, the fielding side will take the field, and then the batters will take the field. That is just how we make sure that the first ball gets bowled at exactly 12:40 by going onto the field 5 minutes earlier. That's the first example. Another example, again, use our test match, and let's say day 1 is an example. Lunch scheduled to be taken from 12 till 12:40. But we all know we hardly ever stop at exactly 12 o'clock. There are many times where we get to 12 o'clock, we look at our watch and we see it's 12 o'clock, but we only, let's say, halfway through the over. Law tells us that when we get to 12 o'clock, even if we're halfway through the over, we cannot take lunch. We need to first complete the over unless a wicket falls or battery retires or something happens. But we need to complete the over first before we can take lunch. So in this example, we get to 12 o'clock, we're only halfway through the over. Now we know we need to complete that over. So now, upon completion of the over, you look at your watch and it's now 12:03. And the bowlers in umpire calls over time in lunch. So time was only called at 12:03. So, what time must the first ball be bowled after lunch? Again, the law guides us. It needs to be exactly 40 minutes later. So we call time at 12:03. So first ball after lunch must be bowled at 12:43. So practically, umpires will take the field at 12:38, followed by the fielding side and then the batters. And that's how we make sure that the first ball gets bowled at exactly 12:43. Just a last example. There are times that something happens before 12 o'clock, like in this example. A wicket falls before 12, at 11:58 in this example. Law tells us if a wicket falls less than 3 minutes to go to our lunch interval, we need to take lunch immediately. So now fielding side took this wicket at 11:58, and because it's less than 3 minutes to go, we need to take lunch immediately. So now again, we apply we get guided by the law. 11:58, the wicket fell. Lunch needs to be 40 minutes. So when must the first ball after lunch be bowled? Yes, correct. At 12:38, exactly 40 minutes later. Our interval between innings is always 10 minutes. And that 10 minutes to start at the when the innings closes until the call of play for the start of the next innings. I'll show you 2 examples. So team A gets dismissed at 11:10. We know our change of innings interval is 10 minutes. So when must the first ball gets bowled after? When must the first ball for team B gets bowled? At 11:20, exactly 10 minutes later. And during this 10-minute change of innings interval, there's usually rolling to take place if the batting side wants rolling. Last example, 14:13, team A gets dismissed. First ball to be bowled at team B, 10 minutes later, 14:23. So we now going to look at the flexibility that the lawmakers brought into the laws, where they allow your intervals to be changed slightly to allow for play to be maximized, more cricket to be played during the day. We're going to start on the flexibility that was brought into the laws for the change of innings interval. Secondly, we're going to allow the flexibility that they brought into the lunch interval. When can lunch be changed so that we can maximize play during the day? And then after the lunch interval, we're going to focus on the tea interval. What flexibility was brought into the tea interval so that we can maximize play during the day? And then lastly, we're going to focus on the drinks interval and see what flexibility was brought in to the law to allow drinks interval to be changed so that we can make sure that we play as much cricket on any given day. So let's start with the allowance for an interval between innings and the changes, the flexibility that the law brought in so that we can maximize play. Let's look at the first example when it comes to the interval between innings. So law tells us if an innings ends 10 minutes or less before close of play on that particular day, there will be no further play at that. It will be stumps for that day. And it goes further by telling us, yes, we ended a few minutes early, but we will not start earlier the next day. I'll use an example to illustrate what point 1 is telling us. So again, our hours of play for our test match is from 10 till 5 o'clock. So side A gets dismissed at 16:50. What happens next? So now this is where point 1 comes in. If an innings ends when 10 minutes or less. So in this example, yes, an innings ended 10 minutes or less to the close of play. So now the law tells us at 16:50, it will be the end of the day's play because this is 10 minutes or less to the close of play. Our close of play is supposed to be 5 o'clock. And the law goes further by saying, yes, I know we ended 10 minutes earlier. We're supposed to end at 5. We ended at 16:50, but we will not start 10 minutes earlier the next day. So no change to be made to the starting time the next day if an innings ends 10 minutes or less before the close of play. Let's look at another example. Again, our hours of play, 10 till 5. Yes, side A gets dismissed at 16:54. What happens next? Yes, correct. It will be the end of the day's play because, again, in this example, it is now 6 minutes to go to the end, to the close of play. So this is less 10 minutes or less to go to the close of play. So it will be stumps or end of day's play at 16:54. Yes, we ended 6 minutes earlier, but the law tells us for on the next day, let's say it's day 2, we will not start 6 minutes earlier. Last example when it comes to change of innings. Again, 10 till 5 is our hours, starting at 10, ending at 5. In this example, side A gets dismissed at 16:48. Now what happens next? Can we apply the law where it's 10 minutes or less? In this example, we cannot activate that clause. And the reason we cannot activate the 10 minutes or less clause is because in this example, it is 12 minutes to go to close of play. So you cannot now at 16:48 say it is end of day's play, it stumps, we'll come back tomorrow. You cannot activate the clause because the clause is clear. The clause tells us it must be 10 minutes or less. Our previous 2 examples, in the one was it was 10 minutes to go. In the second example, it was 6 minutes to go. So there we could activate that particular clause. In this one, we cannot activate that clause because it's 12 minutes to go. So now there needs to be a change of innings. So there will be a change of innings from 16:48 until 16:58. Side B, that first ball to the opening bat of side B needs to be bowled at 16:58. And in this particular day, we'll probably only get 1 over in because close of play is 5 o'clock. So 16:58, that first ball needs to be bowled. We'll complete the over. I don't think they can get more than 1 over in until close of play. So we'll first ball at 16:58 will completely over, and then it will be stumps. So we've now covered the flexibility that the lawmakers brought into the change of innings interval. Next, also when it comes to change of innings, this is now when the change of innings happens during either an interval or an interruption that's more than 10 minutes. And if that is the case, we can now incorporate the change of innings into that interval or interruption. There is a but, unless there's less than 10 minutes remaining of the interval and then the captain declares, then the next innings needs to start 10 minutes later. So point 2 is a mouthful. I'm going to show you examples how to apply point number 2. I just want to bear with me with the theory. The theory just tells us if there's a change of innings, let's use lunch as an example, we can incorporate that change of innings into the lunch interval. There is a but, unless the declaration happened 10 minutes or less to go until the interval ends, the next innings then needs to start 10 minutes later. Just bear with me. That's the theory. Let's look at the examples, then we'll see how to apply this theory. So, in our test match, lunch is 12 until 12:40. So, final ball is bowled at exactly 12 o'clock, and the bowler's in umpire calls over, time, and lunch. So, it's now 12:02. When must the first ball after lunch be bowled? If we call time at 12:02, it needs to be bowled at 12:42. We're enjoying a 40-minute lunch. So Team A is currently on 4:26 for 5. Then, while everyone is enjoying lunch, there's a knock on the umpire's room, and the captain of Team A informs the umpires that, umpire, I am declaring. This is now at 12. So remember, our lunch is from 12:02 till 12:42. First ball needs to be bowled at 12:42. So now there's this declaration at 12:20. So now what the law tells us is there's still 22 minutes left of the lunch interval. We can now incorporate the change of innings interval into our lunch. Don't have to take a 10-minute change of innings interval. Everyone is showing lunch. There are still 22 minutes left of the lunch interval. So we'll incorporate the change of innings interval into our lunch interval. So practically what will happen after receiving the news from the captain of Team A that UC is declaring, we will then go to the captain of Team B, informing him or her that the opposing captain has just declared. Again, practically, you'll ask the now batting captain whether he or she wants rolling. If yes, which roller, and then how many minutes. Now there will be a change of innings from 12:20 until 12:30. I've mentioned that we will now include the lunch interval into, the change of innings interval into our lunch interval. And the first ball after lunch can be bowled at 12:42. Let's look at another example. Again, our lunch from 12 till 12:40. Final ball is bowled at 12:01. Bowlers in umpire, overtime and lunch. First ball after lunch needs to be bowled at 12:41. Team A is currently on 3:55. Now, at 12:33, the captain of Team A comes to you and say, umpire, I am declaring. So remember, our lunch is supposed to be from 12:01 till 12:41. Now at 12:33, the captain comes to you saying, I'm declaring. So how many minutes do we still have of our lunch interval? Only 8 minutes. And this is where that but comes in. If a captain declares less than 10 minutes to go to the end of your lunch interval, In this instance, you need to take now a 10-minute change of innings interval. You need to be fair on the now batting side, because what now needs to happen, rolling needs to happen. Also, the opening batters needs to get ready. And we know rolling is a max of 7 minutes. If a captain wants 7 minutes rolling, that captain is entitled to 7 minutes of rolling. So in this instance, 12:33 the captain declared. So since this declaration is less than 10 minutes until the end of the interval, we now need to allow for a change of innings interval of 10 minutes. So the change of innings interval will be from 12:33 until 12:43. So first ball after lunch will be bowled at 12:43. So in the second example, this will only you can only apply this one if the declaration happens and there's less than 10 minutes to go of the scheduled lunch interval. If we have more than 10 minutes, we can have a 10-minute change of innings interval. We can then incorporate it into our lunch interval. So now we've covered how, when it comes to the change of innings interval, what flexibility the lawmakers allowed us to do. Next, I'm going to focus on our lunch interval, then tea, and then the drinks interval. But before we get to the flexibility that was brought into our lunch interval, there is a clause that the lawmakers brought in where they allow the umpires and both captains, they give the umpires and both captains the power, if playing time is lost through adverse conditions, it can be ground, weather, or light. Let's just use rain as an example. So anytime if there's inclement weather around, but it can be ground, weather, or light, doesn't matter, but let's use rain as an example. So if there was rain in your day, the law gives the umpires and the captains to change their lunch or their tea intervals at any time. There's this clause that allows for flexibility to be brought in at any time. Okay, but there are also specific instances that will happen in the day where the lawmaker guides us by telling us, if the following happens to your lunch, your tea, or your drinks interval, you need to apply the following. We're going to get there, but point 4 is just telling us, it's just a blanket law, and it gives flexibility to your lunch and your tea interval, and it allows the two umpires and both captains to move those lunch and tea intervals at any time. But the two umpires needs to agree, and both captains. But there are certain instances that will happen, and we're going to go through them now, where there's no need for an agreement between anyone because law instructs us. If this happens, you will take an early lunch. You will take an early tea, or you will not take an early tea. Yes, there's this blanket. The previous slide allows us, the umpires and the captains, to change it at any time. But there are certain instances where if this happens, no need for any agreement by the captains or umpires. Law instruct us. If this happens, you'll take an early lunch or an early tea, or not an early lunch or not an early tea. Let's have a look at those instances. We're going to start with our lunch interval first. So the law allows us to change our time for our lunch interval. The first instance is if an innings ends, and the emphasis here is if an innings ends when 10 minutes or less before the agreed time for lunch, you will take lunch immediately. You'll then incorporate the 10-minute change of innings into your lunch interval, and your lunch interval will be the agreed time. I'll show you an example now that will illustrate how this works. Innings ends 10 minutes or less. Let's look at an example. Again, in our test match, lunch is from 12 till 12:40. Team A gets dismissed at 11:52. So what happens next? So in this instance, we can activate this particular clause, and which states, if an innings ends 10 minutes or less to go to your lunch, we will take an early lunch. So in our example, the innings ended 11:52. This is 8 minutes to go to lunch. So it falls in this clause, and which this clause is anything 10 minutes or less, whether it's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, it doesn't matter. If it's 10 or less, we can activate this clause. So now 11:52, it is 8 minutes to go, we can activate this clause. So by activating this clause, it tells us the 10th wicket was taken at 11:52, we can take lunch immediately. So lunch is now taken from 11:52. But remember, the law guided us by telling us lunch needs to be our agreed duration. And what was our agreed duration for our lunch? 40 minutes. So if lunch in this example started at 11:52, when must the first ball after lunch be bowled? Correct, 40 minutes later. First ball needs to be bowled at 12:32. And we will now include the change of innings interval into our lunch interval. Again, we on the flexibility that there is when it comes to changing your time for your lunch interval. Let's look at the second one. Here the law tells us, if through adverse conditions, it can be ground weather or light, or exceptional circumstances. Let's use most popular one is rain. Let's say the rains when 10 minutes or less remains before the agreed time for your lunch. Law tells us you will take lunch immediately. No need to agree with any captains. This is, you can activate this clause as long as it is 10 minutes or less to go to lunch, you will take lunch immediately. Let's look at an example to illustrate this. Again, our lunch is from 12 till 12:40. At 11:54, it starts to rain. What happens next? Do we need to wait till 12 o'clock to take lunch? No, there's this flexibility that the lawmakers brought into. We can change our agreed time for our lunch interval. We can activate this clause because it is 10 minutes or less to go to lunch. We can take lunch immediately. So lunch will now start in this example at 11:54. Again, lunch needs to be the agreed duration of 40 minutes. So lunch will be from 11:54 until 12:34. So first ball after lunch needs to be bowled at 12:34 if conditions permit. Obviously, if it's still raining at 12:34, we obviously can't restart. But the point I'm trying to make in this particular clause, if it rains, and I'll just use rain as an example, but it can be ground weather or light, 10 minutes or less, you can activate this clause by taking an early lunch. And this is the flexibility that the lawmakers brought into the laws. So for us to maximize play. Just imagine lunch had to be at 12 o'clock. Now from 11:54 till 12 o'clock, 6 minutes would have been wasted in the day where we can take an early lunch and just take a 40 minutes lunch, start at 12:34, and especially if the rain interruption was, let's say, just 10, 15 minutes, then no time was lost in the game. This is how we can maximize play during the day. Number 3, again, changing our agreed time for lunch. When can we activate clause 3? Now, this clause tells us, if players need to leave the field when there are more than 10 minutes to go to lunch, more than 10 minutes, then, unless umpires and both captains agree to change lunch, you need to take lunch at the agreed time. So this is not as the previous 2 clauses when an innings in 10 minutes or less, where the law instructs us, you take lunch. If it rains 10 minutes or less, law tells us you must take lunch if it rains 10 minutes or less to your lunch interval. In this example, if it rains more than 10 minutes to go to lunch. This is where now you need the umpires and the captains, and they together need to agree to change our lunch interval. If there's no agreement, we need to take lunch at our agreed time, which is 12 o'clock. Let's look at an example to illustrate how this law works. Again, our lunch from 12 till 12:40. At 11:46, it starts to rain. So what happens next? We saw in the previous clause, if it rains 10 minutes or less to lunch, we can take an early lunch. The law instructs us, take an early lunch. But in this example, it starts raining at 11:46. So we cannot activate that previous clause because it's now 14 minutes to lunch. But now we get guided by point 3. And point 3 tell us, if it starts raining, and it can be anything, I'm just using raining as an example because the law just tell us if players have to leave the field for any reason, and let's just use rain as an example, and in this case it's 14 minutes to go to lunch, it's more than 10 minutes. Now you need for captains and umpires to agree to change lunch. For you now to take lunch at 11:46, so from 11:46 until 12:16, for you now to take lunch at this time, 11:46, you now the umpires needs to go to both captains. Captains, are you happy to take lunch now at 11:46? Lunch will then be for 40 minutes. If both captains are happy, they agree, we will then take lunch at 11:46. If one captain say, no, I'm not happy to take lunch at 11:46. If there's no agreement, we then now forced to take lunch at the agreed time, which is 12 o'clock. So those are the 3 instances where the lawmakers brought in flexibility to change our lunch interval. So now let's move on to the flexibility that was brought into changing the agreed times for our tea interval. Let's look at number 1. If an innings ends 30 minutes or less to tea, we will take an early tea. We will then incorporate the change of innings interval into our tea interval. So you'll see this wording is almost similar to the lunch. If an innings ends, just the difference here is, and we can apply the same principle, but I just want to highlight the difference. When it came to our lunch, the clause said, if an innings ends 10 minutes or less to go to lunch, we will take an early lunch. Tea is slightly different. Same principle applies, but if an innings ends 30 minutes or less to go to tea, we will then take an early tea. So we'll apply the same principle. So in our test match, tea is scheduled to be from 1440 till 1500 hours. Team A now gets dismissed at 1418. What happens next? So this is now where we can activate this clause. By changing our time of our tea interval, we can bring tea early. Why can we bring tea early? Because this innings ended with 30 minutes or less than 30 minutes to go to our scheduled tea interval, which was supposed to be taken at 1440. So there is 22 minutes to go to tea when the last wicket fell. And because the innings ended 30 minutes or less to tea, we will take the tea interval immediately. Your tea interval will now be your agreed duration, and it will start at 1418, and the first ball after tea to be bowled at 1438. We will incorporate the change of innings interval into our tea interval. And practically what will happen is now change of innings, we'll go to the new batting captain, tier 1 rolling, yes, how long, which roller. So that is what will practically happen. So point number 1, and the flexibility that was brought into our tea interval is if an innings ends 30 minutes or less. Same principle as with lunch, but you just need to be aware there is a difference. In the beginning, I got a bit mixed up with when it's 30, when it's 10. It's 10 minutes or less if an innings ends, that's for your lunch interval. But for your T interval, if an innings ends 30 minutes or less, you can activate this particular clause. Okay, this is the first clause or the first type of flexibility that the lawmakers brought in when it comes to changing the time for your T interval. Let's look at the next clause that was brought in. Again, it's with the lawmakers allow this flexibility into the laws so that we can maximize play throughout the day. Point 2 tells us, when 30 minutes remain before the agreed time for tea, there's already an interval between innings in progress. Now the law tells us, play to resume at the end of this 10-minute interval. Let's look at an example which is going to illustrate exactly how this clause number 2 works. So our T, 1440 till 1500. Team A gets dismissed at 1402. What happens next? So 1402 is 38 minutes to go to T. Can we activate the previous clause that what we saw in point 1, 6.1? No, we cannot activate that clause because that clause states if an innings ends 30 minutes or less, we can take an early T. But in this example, the innings ended 38 minutes to go to T. So we cannot activate that clause. Now this is where number 2 comes in. Because we cannot activate that early T clause when an innings ends, and in this instance it didn't end 30 minutes or less, so we know we cannot take an early T. Now we need to take a 10-minute change of innings. So our 10-minute change of innings will be from 1402 till 1412. First ball needs to be bowled at 1412 to the openers of Team B. And then when it comes to our tea time, we will take our tea time at the normal 1440, the scheduled time for tea, which is 1440. So just to summarize, we couldn't activate the previous clause because the innings in this example ended 38 minutes. If it innings ends less than 30 or less, then we can take an early tea. Here, we have to take a 10-minute change of innings and take tea at the normal time. Again, let's look at the flexibility that the lawmakers brought into when it comes to changing your agreed time for tea. Now, adverse conditions, ground weather or light. Let's use rain as an example. And here a stoppage occurs when 30 minutes or less remains before the agreed time for your tea. So here, if it rains 30 minutes or less before the agreed time for your tea, what do? You will take an early tea. I'll show you an example to illustrate this. Our tea is 1440 till 1500. It starts raining at 1426. So what do? Because this is 30 minutes or less to tea, we can activate this clause because the clause tells us if it rains 30 minutes or less to tea, we can take tea. It's the same principle as lunch, but lunch is slightly different because lunch was if it rains 10 minutes or less to lunch, we'll take an early lunch. Tea is slightly different, same principle, but if it rains 30 minutes to go to tea, we'll take an early tea. So we'll take an early tea in this example. So tea will be 20 minutes from 1426 until 1446. First ball of the tea to be bowled at 1446 if conditions permit. Again, we're looking at flexibility, time-saving mechanisms that was brought into the law so that we can maximize play during the day. Another flexibility that the lawmakers brought into when it comes to the tea interval. Here they tell us, if a stoppage is already in progress when you have 30 minutes to go to tea, you can bring tea 30 minutes forward. Your interval will then be your 20 minutes and play to resume after this 20 minutes if conditions permit. Let's look at an example to illustrate how point number 4 works. So our T, 14:40 till 3. 2 o'clock it starts to rain. What happens next? So can we take an early tea when it starts to rain at 2 o'clock? Because this is 40 minutes to go till tea, we cannot take an early tea. Why? Because the previous clause showed us that it needs to rain 30 minutes or less to tea. And this is 40 minutes to tea. So now it started raining at 2 o'clock. So now this clause allows us that when we get to 30 minutes to tea, now we can take tea when we get to 30 minutes to tea. So when we get to 14:10, and that is now exactly 30 minutes to tea, so at 14:10, we can take tea time. We can bring tea forward by 30 minutes. And tea will then be from 14:10 till 14:30. So in this example, when it started to rain at 2 o'clock, we could not take an early tea because it was 40 minutes to go till tea. The law wants it to be 30 minutes or less if there's a rain interruption for you to take an early tea. So now that this law allows us, once we get to half an hour to go till tea, we can then take an early tea. So 1400 we cannot take tea, but once we get to 14:10, now we can bring tea forward by 30 minutes and take tea from 14:10 until 14:30. Another flexibility that was brought in by the lawmakers. Again, to maximize play, to save as much time during the day. And this flexibility is the concept of when a side is 9 wickets down at your lunch or your tea interval. I'm going to use one example, but the same principle applies to whether it's lunch or tea. But the important thing is a side must be 9 wickets down when it comes to your lunch or your tea interval. So no disrespect to the number 10 and the number 11 batsmen, but there's centuries of stats to back up that the 10 and 11 batters don't usually bat that long. Yes, there are many of them that can bat long, but on average, they usually don't bat for too long a period. So lawmakers have stats to back it up. So they then decided, let's try, and they brought this into the law to, again, maximize play during the day. So first thing is, a side must be 9 wickets down when it comes to either your lunch or your tea interval. So now, if a side is 9 wickets down at your lunch interval, you will not take your lunch or tea at the scheduled time. You will play a maximum of 30 minutes extra, a max of 30. You'll give the fielding side the opportunity to take the 10th wicket. Because if they can take the 10th wicket within that 30 minutes, you'll then take tea after or lunch after that. You can then incorporate the change of innings interval into your lunch or into your tea. Again, a time-saving mechanism to maximize play during the day. Okay, we went through the theory. Let's look at an example to see how this practically works when a side is 9 wickets down at lunch or tea. So I'm going to use tea as an example, but remember the same principle will apply to lunch. So always when you get close to your lunch and your tea interval, and especially if a side is 9 down, you need to, alarm bells needs to ring. You need to just tell yourself, side is 9 down. We're close to lunch. We need to delay lunch max half an hour. Now let's see how this law works practically. So I'll use tea time as an example. So tea 14:40 till 1500. Team A is 212 for 9 when the final ball of the over is bowled at 14:40. So we're now 14:40. We look at our what's overtime over. Can we call time and tea? No, the law instructs us we cannot call time at T at this venture of time. The reason is the side is 9 down. The law instructs you. You don't need permission from captains or whoever. The law instructs us. If a side is 9 down, but it must be 9 down. It cannot be 8 or 7 or it must be 9 down. If a side is 9 down and we get to our scheduled T, or the lunch, same principle apply, but let's use, in this example, use T, 1440. Now we know we cannot take T at 1440. So now the law tells us we can extend the session by a max of 30 minutes. We're going to give the fielding side the opportunity to take the 10th wicket. Because if they can take the 10th wicket, we can then take T, and we can then incorporate the change of innings interval into our 20-minute T interval. And it works out fine because, we're not wasting 10 minutes of time. We can play more cricket in the day. We can get more overs in. So side 9 is 9 down at 1440. We now know we cannot take early T. We need to extend the session by a max of 30 minutes. So now how the law works is, if the fielding side gets the 10th wicket, and let's use example 3 o'clock. 1440 supposed to be T. At 3 o'clock, they take the 10th wicket. So at 3, we'll take T immediately. T will then be from 1500 hours until 1520. We will then incorporate the change of innings interval into our T interval. So that's the first option, if the fielding side can take the wicket within that half an hour. But if the fielding side cannot take the wicket within half an hour, so 1440 is supposed to be our T, 1510 is when that half an hour ends. So if by 1510 they're not able to take the 10th wicket, we need to draw the line somewhere. We cannot, just leave it blank and just say until you reach the 10th wicket. We need to draw the line somewhere. I've seen 10th wicket partnerships that last more than a day. So the line that the lawmakers decided to draw was 30 minutes. So max 30 minutes to see if you can take the 10th wicket. So let's say they cannot take the 10th wicket. So by 1510, that is now we're forced to. Now we will take T, and T will be from 1510 until 1530. So just to quickly summarize, if a side is 9 wickets down, it can be lunch or T. The same principle will apply. In this example, I just used T. You need to delay T by 9 wickets by 30 minutes to see if the fielding side can get it. If they can get it within 30 minutes, as soon as they take the wicket, you'll take T from that moment for 20 minutes. If they can't take it within 30 minutes, you can play only a max of 30 minutes extra. So by 1510, they're not able to take the wicket. You'll then take T at 1510 for 20 minutes. First ball off the tee needs to be bowled at 1530. Lastly, and I know I've spoken lots of numbers over the past few minutes, lots of numbers to absorb, but I'm almost done with the numbers. Interval for drinks. So what flexibility did the lawmakers bring into when it comes to the drinks interval? Let's have a look. So firstly, the law guides us by saying, yes, you are allowed to take a drinks interval, not more than 5 minutes. So we know that for Test match cricket, the International Cricket Council, they're the governing body, and they decided that drinks should be 4 minutes. The law just tell us not more than 5. So ICC decided 4 minutes for drinks. Okay, no problem. So let's look at the flexibility that the lawmakers brought into. So the lawmakers decided, and again, to save a bit of time, whatever time you decided to take your drinks, let's say it is 11 o'clock. In Test match cricket, they have 2-hour sessions and drinks in the middle of the 2-hour session. Let's use South African time as an example. First session starts at 10, lunch is at 12 o'clock. So 11 o'clock will be the first drinks break for the day. 11 o'clock till 11 11:04. So now, and this is the flexibility that the lawmakers brought into. If a wicket falls or a batter retires within 5 minutes to go to drinks, we will take drinks immediately. That is the flexibility. But it must be 5 minutes to go to drinks. Let's look at two examples just to show how the law works. For example, one, in our test match, our drinks is scheduled to be taken from 11 till 11:04. So after 19.1 balls were bowled, a wicket falls at 10:56. Now what happens? So there's still 5 balls left in the over, and drinks at 11 o'clock, which is 4 minutes away. Do we allow the new batter to come in, face the 5 balls, and then take drinks? No. And this is this flexibility that they brought into the drinks, again, to maximize play, to allow for more play during the day. So because this wicket fell 4 minutes to go to drinks, the laws just say within 5 minutes of the agreed time, and this is 4 minutes to go to drinks. And because it's 4 minutes to go to drinks, and this wicket fell, we will take drinks immediately. Drinks will then be from 10:56 until 11 o'clock. And then play will restart at 11 o'clock. There are still 5 balls left in the over. That 5 balls then needs to be completed after the drinks interval. So the emphasis here is a wicket must fall or a batter must retire with 5 minutes or less to go to your drinks to activate this clause. Tom, last example that I'm doing before I'm handing back to you. Again, is drinks to maximize play. Drinks 11 till 11:04 in our test match. After 15.4 balls were bowled, a wicket falls at 10:54. What happens next? We know our drinks is at 11 o'clock, but this wicket fell at 10:54. Can we take an early drinks? No, we cannot take an early drinks. Why? Because the law only allows for if a wicket falls 5 minutes or less to go to drinks. Because this wicket fell, when this wicket fell, there was 6 minutes to go to drinks. We now cannot activate the clause. The incoming batter now needs to come in and needs to face the remaining 2 balls of the over. Because it's 6 minutes to go to drinks, incoming batter needs to come in, face the 2 balls, and we'll take drinks at 11 o'clock. Tom, thank you so much. That is all I'm covering for this evening. I'm now handing back to you.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. And thank you to the candidates for the questions that they have posed while you were presenting. Firstly, I want to acknowledge everybody from all around the world for joining us for the lecture. Some familiar names in the crowd. Aviwe Tieka from East London in South Africa. And then quite a few of our friends from the US who we visited in June. Erfan Syed, who hosted us in New York. Thanks for joining us. Abir from Dallas, who took us on a glory trip in his lovely Tesla. Nihan from Stellenbosch, welcome back. And everybody else who I cannot mention, thank you for your attendance and your interaction. So Abdullah, first question we have is from Paul. With all of these changes of the intervals, and especially if we're looking to move lunch because we have rain at a certain point in time, whose watch is to be used? Is it the stadium watch, the umpire's watch, or is there another official timepiece that is used in a cricket match?
Paul, thank you for your question. I'll start at the top level, which is international cricket. So at international cricket, they have huge scoreboards, and most grounds have a stadium clock on there. So what we do before game start is we synchronize our watches with the scorers. They usually in charge of the stadium clock. So we, before the game starts, this is now at the international and provincial level, we'll pop into the scorer's box and we will synchronize our watches with the scorers because it's so much easier. The scoreboard is big, the time on there is big. Everyone can see the score so much easier if we use the stadium clock. But before play starts on day one or on every day, we will go to the scorers, synchronize our watches so that the times that we have and that the times that the scorers will put on the scoreboard are exactly the same. Why do we also need to synchronize our watches? There are times where the scoreboard can go down. So now our times needs to be exactly the same. That's why we'll go to them, make sure we all have exactly the same time, and they'll put it on the big scoreboard. And it's so easy for everyone to watch, and that is the timepiece that we'll use. Everyone can see it. Lunch is at 12 o'clock. We're close to lunch. Everyone look at the board. They can see 1 or 2 or 3 minutes to go to lunch. So we'll use the stadium clock. If it's not working at international, provincial level, our watch are synchronized with the scoreboard. We also have I prefer using a digital watch to have the seconds and the time on there. We can then relay the timings to the fielders if they want it, or we can take lunch at exactly 12 o'clock. That is international and provincial cricket. At club cricket, same procedure. You go to the scorers before the game and you synchronize your watches. So both umpires and the scorers, we will synchronize our watches together so that our watches are exactly the same. Umpires will have the same time and the scorers will have the same time as well. Tom, did I answer Paul's question?
100%. Thanks, Dula.
Okay.
Next question is from Pradiot, who is in Dallas. We also met him back in June during the World Cup over in the US. He just wants to know if we can change the wording slightly on a slide. On the slide number 20, changing the agreed times for tea interval. Point number 2 currently says, if when 30 minutes remains before the agreed time for tea, an interval between innings is already in progress, play shall resume at the end of the 10-minute interval if conditions permit. So Pradiot is asking if we can say, if more than 30 minutes remains before the agreed time for tea and an interval between innings is in progress, play shall resume at the end of the 10-minute interval. Change of wording there, Abdullah. I don't know if it's going to confuse things. I think we should rather stick to what the law says.
Yes, Tom, let's stick to what the lawmakers use. I mean, there is an example to show exactly, how to apply the law. I don't think we should change the wording.
Happy, Dula. Thank you. Then we've got a question from Abir, our friend in Dallas. Good morning from Dallas, Abir. I think it's still morning in Dallas. As per your example, if there is an interval in progress due to rain, the game stopped at 1400 hours. The rain continues beyond 1410. Can the umpires then call tea at 1410? Remember, our official time for tea is 14:40.
Yes, Abir, the law actually instructs us that, yes, we cannot take tea at 1400 because it's 40 minutes to go till tea. But when we get to 1410, now it's 30 minutes to go to tea. Now the law tells us if we get to 1410, we can declare tea at 1410, and tea will be from 1410 till 1430. So the answer to your question is yes.
Perfect. Next question is from Shabir. You did mention this, Abdullah, but I think he maybe wasn't on the call or he didn't quite hear you clarify that. Can the 30 minutes for the 9-wicket rule be applied to both lunch and tea on the same day? That would be interesting.
Yeah, well, must be a green number for so many wickets to fall. The answer to your question is yes. If you need to apply the law, and the only question that you need to ask yourself, and if a team is 9 wickets down, if a team is 9 wickets down at tea or at lunch, you need to apply the law that says delay tea by 30 minutes max, allow the fielding side to try to take the 10th wicket. And if it was a green number and the other side is now batting between lunch and tea, and they lost 9 wickets, and we get to tea and they 9 down, you can apply the same clause, because the clause say if a team is 9 down, yes, it is on the same day, doesn't matter. If a team is 9 down at tea, you need to delay tea by a max of 30 minutes. So again, Tom, the answer to Sabir's question is yes.
Abdullah, the extreme opposite to that scenario is if the number 10 and 11 batter were in at lunchtime, 9 wickets down, we extended for 30 minutes, and then they're still batting at the scheduled tea break. Then we extend the tea break, or we delay the tea break by 30 minutes. That will be a very frustrated fielding side if that ever happens.
It will be, but yeah, we need to apply the law. They 9 down at tea. We need to delay tea by max of 30 minutes.
Great stuff. Daniel asks, or he mentions, that he has not joined an Umpires Association. He lives in the Eastern Cape. He would like to know how he can join an Umpires Association. So, Daniel, there are 2 Umpires Associations in the Eastern Cape. There is Eastern Province Cricket Umpires Association, which is based mainly in Port Elizabeth. And then there is Border Cricket Umpires Association, which is based mainly in East London. So you need to let me know where exactly in the Eastern Cape you live, and then I will put you into contact with the right people at the relevant Umpires Association closest to you. So if you're still on the call, Daniel, please just type into the chat box where in the Eastern Cape you are, and I'll put you in contact with the right people. Pradyot asks again, how early can we bring lunch forward? For example, if lunch is scheduled for 12 p.m. and there is a stoppage in play since 10:30, if both the captains decide for lunch to be at 11 a.m., is that okay, Abdullah?
So Pradyut, there is a catch-all clause that allows the umpires and captains to implement weather change the times of lunch and tea. But you also need to take into account lunch. Is lunch ready? Is lunch not ready? I mean, taking an early lunch at 11 o'clock, I'm sure the caterers will not be. If lunch is supposed to be scheduled at 12 and most players want a hot lunch, I don't think the caterers will be ready to take for lunch to be at 11 o'clock. So you don't want to take lunch at 11 till 11:40, and players just going to sit there. There's no lunch ready. No one is going to eat. Lunch is only arriving at 11:45. Usually lunch caterers time it so that lunch is ready about 15 20 minutes maybe to go till the scheduled lunch interval, because players want a hot lunch. So you need to be practical when deciding to change your times for lunch. I don't think it would be practical to take a 11 o'clock lunch because of lunch not being ready. Also, what you need to take into account is if you now take an early lunch from 11 till 11:40, so how long is that second session going to be? Because tea is at 14:40. You're going to sit with a very long second session by taking such an early lunch. So those are also the practicalities that needs to be taken into account when taking an early lunch. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Yes, I agree with you there. In my years of umpiring first-class cricket and also watching test match cricket, I think I've only ever heard of lunch being brought forward by up to 30 minutes. I haven't heard of lunch being brought forward by more than 30 minutes for the reasons that you have just mentioned. Right. Next question is from Rahul. Can you elaborate some of the examples of exceptional circumstances, excluding ground weather and light? So I'm not sure where you mentioned exceptional circumstances in your presentation today, Abdullah.
Yeah, to bring lunch forward, there is a clause where it says exceptional ground weather, light, or exceptional circumstances.
Right.
So I can give you one example, Rahul, of an exceptional circumstances that I had where we brought lunch forward a bit. It was a club game. It was a more-day game. And there was a medical emergency. And a helicopter had to land. The cricket field was the only open field available close to where the patient was. So medical emergency, the helicopter was forced to land on the cricket field that was the closest to where the patient was. And obviously the helicopter landed smack bang in the middle of the field. That for the umpires was an exceptional circumstances. It was a hot day. It wasn't rain. It wasn't ground or light. We then took an early lunch and to allow the patient to be taken into the helicopter. The helicopter then flew away 15 minutes later. But no time was wasted. Because we took lunch while the helicopter was on the field of play. So over, Tommy, and that was just an example of exceptional circumstances that I had. I don't know if you had any exceptional circumstances to take an early lunch.
No, Abdullah. I have had a sight screen that collapsed onto the field, and that required about 2 hours worth of fixing time. But that is a ground issue. It's not an exceptional circumstance by definition. So yeah, that is all that I can remember that was a little bit out of the ordinary for having to move our time for lunch. Rian Fenter says, hi all, thanks for the training. I am 46, is level 3 my last level? I'm only doing school games and a club game if asked. Is level 3 overkill for school games? Rian, a level 3 exam does involve a lot of dealings with last hour calculations, which are related to Morday cricket. I know that some school matches are still played in the format of time cricket, where it's a unlimited overs match in a 1 day format. So there, your knowledge of the last hour is required. So if you are umpiring those types of matches, then level 3 is good to have. Level 3 also has a lot of scenario-based questions for the mode of dismissals laws. So it just will sharpen up your umpiring skills for you to be able to apply the different laws and more than one law to a scenario. The more you study, the more you keep yourself up to date with the laws, the better you will be as an umpire. And because of the evolving nature of the game of cricket, the latest law changes, if I remember correctly, were in October 2022. So even though you might not use all of the level 3 course material when you are umpiring, it will still be good for you to do level 3 because you will have the latest updates of the laws from October 2022 covered in this course and the exam. I hope that makes sense and that encourages you to keep going, Rian. And yes, unfortunately, at 46 years old, you will not progress further in Cricket South Africa's pipeline for umpires to develop into first-class national panel umpires. The cutoff there is 42 years old. If you have not made it to Kaya Majola week, which is the boys under 19 week, currently on the go in Cape Town, then unfortunately Cricket South Africa will not look at you for further development. However, I suggest that should not discourage you from constantly wanting to improve as an umpire and taking up any courses and qualifications that will aid your knowledge and application of the laws of cricket. Next question is from Shadab Khan. Shadab is from Pakistan and he's a level 2 umpire in Pakistan, and he wants to attend this level 3 course. And will he be able to supervise matches in Africa once he has passed this course? So Shadab, we do have an exchange program for umpires who want to umpire in Cape Town, South Africa. All you need is to have done either level 1, level 2, or level 3 with us, Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. Once you have completed a course and successfully passed and gotten your certificate, then you can buy a flight to Cape Town, book your accommodation in specific areas which are close to many cricket grounds in the southern suburbs of Cape Town is where we suggest. Note that the trip will be fully self-funded and the accommodation as well would be for your account. You will be allocated to club cricket matches in Cape Town at a level we feel appropriate based on your experience and your qualification. So you will not be able to umpire first-class cricket in South Africa that is reserved for panel umpires. But the standard of club cricket in Cape Town is well renowned as probably the best standard of club cricket around the country. So it will be great experience for you from whichever country you come from to umpire club cricket in Cape Town. We have previously had an Indian umpire who came in November 2022 and stayed for 3 months until the end of January 2023. And because of his experience in Cape Town umpiring school cricket, umpiring club cricket, umpiring women's cricket, he was then allowed to write the entrance exam to become a state umpire in his state in India. So it opened up a lot of doors for him, which probably would not have been opened up if it wasn't for his exchange program in Cape Town. I hope that helps, Shadab. Erfan from New York says, great to catch up with Tom and Abdullah. Enjoyed the presentation. Erfan, I think you are one of the first people to have joined our courses way back in 2020 and 2021. Great to see you again on one of our lectures, and we thank you for your attendance and continued support. I am just going to go into the admin settings of the meeting so I can allow candidates to switch on their cameras if they wish, and also if they want to ask questions live, microphones are now also enabled. Alia asks, if a team plays with 10 players and there are only 9 wickets available for the team to be all out, does the fall of the 9th wicket rule change to 8 wickets when considering extending an interval by 30 minutes for the last wicket to fall? Abdullah, I'm going to throw that one at you, my friend. Please help Alia.
Alia, unfortunately not. The law tells us side needs to be 9 wickets down to activate the additional 30 minutes clause. Must be 9 down. Yes, I see you. Yes, technically there's not another batter to come in, but unfortunately the side is not 9 down, so that clause cannot be activated. If they're 8 down at tea or lunch, you then need to take your lunch or you need to take your tea time. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Tula. I see Rian replied while I gave my message of encouragement to him. He says, great, thanks. I believe there is a next level of training to give training to new umpires and teaching my young ones the ways. That is definitely a great attitude to have, Rian. Each one, teach one. We have all gotten to where we are as umpires and as trainers because somebody else trained us to help develop our careers. So let's give back whenever and wherever we can. Ladies and gents, I do not see any more questions or comments in the chat box. I do not see any hands up in the meeting room. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for their attendance and their interaction this evening. The meeting is being recorded as always. Hopefully the hotel Wi-Fi will allow me to download the recording and then upload it onto YouTube. If possible, I will send the link of the recording to everybody in the next couple of hours. Otherwise, it might have to wait for me to get back to Cape Town on Thursday. But whatever the case, we will meet up once again tomorrow, same time, same place, same meeting link that was sent on today's email and last week Tuesday's email. So I wish you a great day further. See you tomorrow. Thank you and good night. Suraj, we will answer your question tomorrow.